Jayden Miller's mornings began before the sun touched the rooftops of his trailer park. At just 14, he had already mastered the rhythm of sacrifice, waking in the bitter cold to deliver newspapers on his rusted bike, racing against time to get back and prepare for school. His shoes, barely holding together, flapped noisily with every step. One lace was replaced by a piece of speaker wire, and the fabric peeled back so badly that the toes of his socks peeked through socks with more holes than cloth. He didn't complain. He didn't know how. Life in the Miller household didn't leave space for complaints. There were too many mouths to feed too many bills with red stamps on the corners, and too little hope to go around. But when Jayden ran, everything changed. He didn't run like someone escaping hardship. He ran like someone chasing something more. With each stride across cracked sidewalks and weed-choked fields, there was a grace to him that made neighbors pause. They didn't know why they stared. Maybe it was the way his back stayed straight, or how his feet seemed to barely touch the ground. To them, he was just another quiet boy from the edge of town. But to Coach Harris, who first spotted him during a chaotic gym class, Jayden moved like someone meant for more. The coach, with his salt and pepper hair and weathered clipboard, had trained dozens of young runners in his prime, but something in Jayden's rhythm, the way his arms and legs worked in perfect sync, stopped him in his tracks. After class, Coach Harris approached him, his voice steady and non-intrusive. "You ever think about running for real?" Jayden shrugged, eyes averted. "No time. Gotta work." The coach didn't push, but the next day he stood by the school gates with a pair of worn but well-built running shoes, his own from years past. "They ain't pretty," he said, "but they'll take you further than those." Jayden hesitated. His hands grazed the shoes like they were something sacred. "My folks won't be happy," he said quietly. "They don't see the point in running." At home, his mom scrubbed motel toilets for cash. His dad, worn from night shifts at the gas station, barely said a word anymore. They weren't cruel, just exhausted. To them, dreams were dangerous distractions. Real life was about bills, medications, and holding on. Jayden didn't argue with them. He just nodded when they said running wouldn't put food on the table. But inside, something refused to die. He carved out time in slivers after school, after stacking grocery crates after dinner when the world got quiet. He'd run through empty lots lit by flickering street lamps, his breath sharp in the cold, his legs aching but alive. He kept his grades up too, never giving his parents a reason to shut it all down. Running didn't make him feel less tired, but it made the fatigue feel worth it. Coach Harris noticed everything. He never praised Jayden loudly or made promises. He just stood by the edge of the track each evening, stopwatch in hand, eyes tracking each lap like he was watching history unfold. There were no roaring crowds or shiny medals, only the quiet understanding between a boy who wouldn't quit and a man who believed in what couldn't yet be seen. Jayden didn't train because someone told him he was special. He trained because every step away from that trailer park, every drop of sweat, every mile logged in hand-me-down shoes felt like a declaration. That he mattered, that he was more than his poverty, more than his circumstances. And though no one clapped for him yet, Jayden Miller ran like the world was watching, because deep down he knew that someday it would be. Coach Harris stood silently at the edge of the track, one cold Monday afternoon, clipboard in hand, watching Jayden finish yet another grueling lap. His breaths came in harsh bursts, his hoodie soaked through his form, slightly hunched from the exhaustion of a full day of school and hours spent unloading boxes at the corner store. When Jayden finally slowed, Coach Harris stepped forward, not to critique, but to offer a folded form. "Registration just opened," he said, tapping the top line with a pen. Jayden scanned the page. At the top, State Youth Marathon Championship. His name was already printed in block letters. "I paid the fee," Harris added almost casually. "You don't have to win. I just want you to run among those who believe they belong there." "Because you do." Jayden didn't answer immediately. He looked down at the shoes the coach had given him, dirt-stained but reliable, and finally nodded. "All right," he whispered. "Let's do it." The weeks that followed became a blur of discipline and fatigue. Jayden's life was a mosaic of responsibilities, early morning deliveries, a full school schedule, and evening shifts at the grocery store. When the rest of the town quieted down, Jayden ran. He ran until the streetlights flickered above him like stars losing patience. Coach Harris was always waiting rain or shine stopwatch in hand, his encouragement minimal but steadfast. Focus on your breathing. Stretch your stride. Push through the last quarter mile. Jayden absorbed it all like gospel. But outside the track, the ridicule began. Word spread quickly at school about his training, and students who had barely noticed him now had plenty to say. "What's the prize, new shoes?" one classmate joked. But the worst of it came from Brandon Walsh, the golden boy of their high school son of Mayor Walsh and captain of every team he touched. Brandon's sneers were polished, practiced. "This isn't some feel-good movie, Miller," he said one afternoon, smirking as Jayden passed him in the hallway. "You think grit and garbage shoes are enough to beat academy runners? This is real competition." His entourage laughed, but Jayden didn't react. He couldn't afford to. Every moment wasted on anger was one less second he could be training. Still, the words stung. They clung to him like sweat. Even Coach Harris heard whispers from other faculty. "He's setting that boy up for failure," one said, letting him think he belongs with the elite. But Harris never wavered. "Hope isn't a lie," he'd reply, "not when someone's willing to earn it." At home, Jayden's parents remained skeptical. His mother started working weekend shifts at a rundown motel, and his father grew quieter, wearier. When Jayden returned late from training, his little sister sometimes fell asleep on the couch, wheezing from asthma medicine running low again. The burden of it all pressed harder on Jayden's shoulders, but still he ran. Then something unexpected began to happen. One night after work, the owner of a local diner pulled Jayden aside and slipped him an envelope. "Heard about what you're doing," he said. "You've got more heart than most of us." Inside was $50 and a short note written in shaky cursive. A few days later, someone anonymously left a pair of high-performance socks in Jayden's locker. Another afternoon, he found a second-hand stopwatch left on the bench with a scrap of paper for timing the future. Jayden said nothing, but he began to feel it, eyes watching from the shadows, not in mockery, but in support. The same community that once overlooked him was slowly beginning to cheer for him, not with fanfare, but with small, meaningful gestures that said, "We see you." Jayden wore every gift like armor. The socks, the watch, even the old hoodie Coach Harris had given him after practice one night. They weren't just items, they were reminders. That someone believed, that someone cared. He trained harder, ran longer, and began to understand something deeper. This marathon wasn't just a race. It was a quiet rebellion against everything that had told him to stay small. Every lap was a refusal, a declaration that his worth couldn't be measured by where he came from, what shoes he wore, or who his father wasn't. As the race day crept closer, Jayden didn't fantasize about winning. He focused on one goal: to cross the finish line, knowing he had left nothing behind. Coach Harris noticed the shift. One night, as Jayden completed his final lap chest, heaving face determined, the coach simply said, "You're not running for medals anymore, are you?" Jayden shook his head. "I'm running because I can." The coach smiled just slightly. That's when it matters most. And as the days counted down, the boy in patched-up shoes became something more: a symbol of quiet power, of a runner not chasing glory, but proving to the world and to himself that resilience could run further than privilege ever dared. The morning of the race arrived, cloaked in a sharp grey chill. The streets of downtown Birmingham buzzed with energy as athletes from all corners of the state stretched and jogged in place, their sleek uniforms glowing with brand logos and school crests. Jayden stood quietly at the edge of the crowd, his thrifted hoodie pulled tight around his shoulders, bib number 212 pinned slightly crooked to his chest. The shoes on his feet, Coach Harris's old pair, had been scrubbed clean the night before with a toothbrush, and care not because they were flashy, but because they were sacred. As the announcer's voice echoed over the loudspeakers and the starting horn blared, Jayden didn't flinch. He took a deep breath, focused his mind, and ran not like someone trying to win, but like someone proving he belonged. The early miles were a game of patience. While others surged ahead, burning energy with every ambitious stride, Jayden maintained a steady rhythm. He listened to his breath, watched his step, and waited. One by one, he began to pass the runners who'd started too fast, some stumbling from fatigue, others gasping for air. Around mile 10, he overtook Brandon Walsh, who was already red-faced and struggling to keep pace. Their eyes met briefly, Brandon with disbelief, Jayden with calm focus. By mile 16, Jayden had pushed into the top 5. The crowd noise grew louder, the course narrower, winding through city parks, lined with tall trees and early autumn leaves. And by mile 22, only one runner remained ahead of him, Emily Kensington. Emily was everything Jayden was not: tall, powerful, backed by sponsorships and professional coaching. Her stride was precise, her gear spotless. But Jayden noticed something shift. Her posture stiffened, her gait less fluid. At mile 23, her left arm hung oddly. At mile 24, just as the course turned into a wooded parkway, Emily veered sideways, stumbled, and collapsed near the trail railing. Jayden's breath caught. The finish line was less than 2 miles away. He could already hear the faint cheers, the crowd waiting. Victory was in reach, something his family had never known. But his legs stopped. His eyes darted to a single medic nearby, who was shouting into a radio. "We've got a runner down checkpoint Delta, possible heat stroke. No backup." There was no hesitation. Jayden turned around and ran back. Emily lay limp, her breathing shallow, skin flushed and dry. The medic was panicked, alone. "I need to get her to the main aid station, but I can't carry her," the medic said, voice shaking. Jayden didn't speak. He crouched beside her carefully, slid his arms under her back and knees, and lifted. His legs screamed in protest, already burned from the race. Emily wasn't heavy, but her limp body weighed down on muscles already near collapse. The trail's uneven ground threatened every step, but Jayden pushed forward. Sweat poured from his body, his vision blurred, but he didn't stop. At one point, Emily stirred, mumbling in confusion. "You're okay," Jayden whispered through gasps. Almost there. Reaching the bench, he laid her down gently, while the medic sprang into action, opening gel packs, applying cold compresses, elevating her legs. "You bought us time," the medic said, eyes wide. "She's going to be okay." Jayden didn't reply. He sat beside the bench for a moment, his chest heaving, then rose. The finish line still called from the distance. He began jogging again, legs heavy as iron. Other runners passed him without a second glance. Some looked puzzled, unsure where he had gone. He didn't care. The applause at the finish line wasn't for him. Cameras clicked for the top 3. Jayden crossed in 5th place, unnoticed, uncelebrated. But waiting just beyond the final checkpoint, Coach Harris stood, eyes locked on Jayden with a quiet pride. "You didn't have to stop," the coach said softly. Jayden looked him in the eye. "I couldn't just leave her." Harris smiled faintly. "No, you couldn't." There were no medals for what Jayden had done. No press interviews or flashing lights. Just silence and the weight of his own decision. Back at school, some students whispered, "Thought he was gonna win." Others rolled their eyes at his 5th place ribbon. Even Brandon smirked in the hallway, saying nothing but exuding smug dismissal. Jayden said nothing. He didn't defend himself or explain. He figured if people needed a trophy to understand, then maybe they weren't ready to hear the truth. Coach Harris offered to speak to the principal to get the story out. Jayden declined. "Let it sit," he said. "Truth still true, even if nobody claps for it." That night back at home, Jayden placed his race bib beside a photo of his little sister, the one with the gap-toothed grin, and stared at it like a quiet offering. Because in that moment on the trail, when the world demanded he choose between glory and compassion, Jayden didn't flinch. He made the kind of decision that wouldn't win medals, but might just save a life. And in that choice, he didn't lose the race, he won something far greater, something no crowd could ever cheer loud enough to capture. 2 days had passed since the race, and the world had moved on. Jayden returned to his quiet routines, delivering newspapers at dawn, stacking crates in the corner store, finishing homework by the dim light of a flickering bulb. The medalists from the marathon were already being celebrated online, and in the local paper their names bolded beneath triumphant photos. Jayden's name wasn't there. There was no article about the boy who carried a rival runner through the trees. No interview, no mention. At school, a few students mumbled, "Better luck next time," while others didn't even acknowledge the race at all. Brandon Walsh strutted down the hallway as if nothing had changed, but Jayden didn't mind. He hadn't expected attention. He had run, made a choice, and carried its weight without regret. He told no one what he had done, not even his younger siblings, who still believed he had won just by showing up. That quiet morning, as Jayden sat on the porch steps of the trailer with his hoodie wrapped around his shoulders and his hands still aching from work, a deep hum echoed through the park. It was foreign, out of place, smooth, sleek, powerful. A black Cadillac with polished chrome rolled slowly down the gravel path, turning every head in the neighborhood. Jayden's mother stepped out of the kitchen apron, still tied her eyes narrowing with confusion. His father came from the side of the house, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. The car came to a stop in front of their lot, and out stepped Emily Kensington, her arm still in a sling, a faint bruise on her temple. She looked nervous but composed. From the passenger side emerged her father, Richard Kensington, tall, dressed in a charcoal grey suit that looked like it belonged on a magazine cover, not in a trailer park. His expression was unreadable. Jayden stood slowly, unsure of what to say. He wasn't used to being seen, especially not by people like them. Mr. Kensington approached, his voice calm but firm. "Are you Jayden Miller?" Jayden nodded. "Yes, sir. I'm Emily's father," he said, glancing briefly at his daughter. "She told me everything. What you did. What you gave up." Jayden said nothing. Emily offered a faint smile. "You saved my life," she said. "I don't remember everything, but I know I wouldn't have made it if you hadn't stopped." Her voice cracked at the end. Mr. Kensington stepped closer. His eyes softer now. "I don't give handouts," he said. "I don't believe in charity. But I do believe in character and what you did out there. That was integrity, son. That's what I want associated with the programs I support." From his inside pocket, he pulled out an envelope and handed it to Jayden. "This is a full athletic scholarship. You'll be training at one of the most advanced facilities in the state, and I'd like to invite you to join the Kensington Elite Track Program." Jayden's mouth parted, stunned into silence, but Mr. Kensington wasn't finished. He turned to Jayden's parents, now standing shoulder to shoulder. "And for the two of you, I have openings at two of my regional businesses. Management positions, full benefits, no more scraping by. It's time you had the chance to live, not just survive." Jayden's mother put a hand over her mouth, tears already forming. His father stood frozen, nodding once, trying to process the weight of what had just been offered. It was too much too fast. It felt like a dream that might shatter if anyone breathed too loudly. Jayden turned to Coach Harris, who had quietly appeared at the end of the lot, watching from a respectful distance. His arms were crossed, his face unreadable. Jayden looked back at Mr. Kensington and cleared his throat. "Sir, if I go, he goes too." Kensington raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me, Coach Harris," Jayden said, pointing gently. "He's the reason I'm standing here. I wouldn't have made it without him. If there's a spot for me, there's got to be a spot for him." Mr. Kensington turned, looked Coach Harris up and down, then nodded slowly. "We can always use a man with an eye for heart. Consider him appointed senior advisor to the program." Coach Harris's expression didn't change much, but there was a flicker in his eyes, a shift in his posture. Jayden saw it and smiled. The visit didn't last long. There were no cameras, no announcements, just quiet gratitude, handshakes, and promises that didn't feel hollow. When the Cadillac pulled away, leaving behind a stunned silence, Jayden sat down again on the porch steps, his legs still buzzing, not from running, but from the shift in his reality. His parents sat beside him, the weight of years momentarily lifted. Inside the envelope was more than a scholarship. It was freedom, and he had earned it not by winning, but by stopping, by choosing humanity over headlines. That night, as the stars blinked through the clouds and the crickets sang, Jayden lay in bed, holding the envelope like a lifeline. For the first time in his life, the future wasn't something he had to imagine. It was right there, folded in paper and written in belief. Jayden's life transformed in the months following that day outside his trailer park, but he never let the change rewrite who he was at his core. Now training at a world-class facility filled with synthetic tracks, high-tech equipment, and professional coaches who monitored everything from hydration to heartbeat, Jayden adapted quickly but never forgot where he began. He won his first regional title that fall, then another the following spring. By summer, national scouts had started to watch his races. Articles began to circulate online calling him the boy with unshakable focus and the humble runner who chose compassion over gold. But at night, in the quiet of his dorm room, beneath a perfectly made bed with fresh linens and a sponsor-funded mattress, he kept an old shoebox wrapped in a worn towel. Inside were Coach Harris's shoes, the ones that had carried him through the marathon, through the choice, through the moment that would define him. The soles were frayed. The laces had been replaced 3 times, but to Jayden they were untouchable. While his days were full of interviews, press briefings, and training drills, Jayden made space for something more important, returning home. Once a month, without fail, he showed up at his old high school unannounced. He'd walk into the aging gymnasium, where Coach Harris still volunteered, nod respectfully, and then join the group of kids who were always surprised to see him there. He didn't make speeches. He didn't talk about medals or sponsorships. He just watched offered tips, timed sprints, and jogged beside them when they got tired. Most of the students didn't know the full story of what he'd done at the marathon. To them, he was just the famous runner who came back. But over time, they learned that Jayden wasn't interested in being admired. He was interested in showing them they mattered. He told them the same thing every time. You don't have to be the fastest. You just have to keep moving forward. Some of the kids listened. Others needed time. But there was one boy, small, quiet, maybe 10 years old, who always stood at the edge of the group watching, but never joining. He wore shoes that were clearly too tight, the rubber splitting at the edges, the insoles flapping like tongues with each hesitant step. After one practice, when the other kids had gone, Jayden walked over. "You want to run?" he asked gently. The boy shrugged. "I can't," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "I don't have real shoes." Jayden nodded slowly, understanding in a way no one else could. Without saying a word, he walked back to his gym bag, unzipped it, and pulled out the old shoebox. The towel unfolded like something sacred. He lifted the shoes, held them out, and said, "They're not new, but they'll take you somewhere." The boy's eyes widened. He reached out slowly as if touching treasure. He cradled the shoes like they were made of gold. Jayden watched him step into them awkwardly. At first, his stride uncertain, his balance wobbly. But then something shifted. The boy started running. Just a few short strides, then longer, faster, each step more confident than the last. Jayden didn't call out or cheer. He just stood there, arms crossed, heart full. From the bench nearby, Coach Harris, now officially a senior advisor for the youth program, watched the whole thing unfold. He leaned back, smiled faintly, and murmured, "Full circle." Jayden shook his head, eyes still on the boy. "No," he said softly, "it's just the next lap." In the years that followed, Jayden would go on to break records, appear in televised championships, and be the face of youth athletics programs aimed at underfunded communities. But no matter how far he ran, he never left behind the moment that made him. He didn't measure success by how many medals he hung on his wall or how many magazine covers bore his name. He measured it by the kids who started showing up at his old school, believing for the first time that maybe they could run too. He measured it by every shoe he helped tie, every broken breath he encouraged with a nod, every quiet child who found their stride. Jayden's story became legend, not because he was the fastest, but because he was willing to stop running when it mattered most. And in passing on those worn shoes to the next generation, he didn't just share gear. He passed on belief. A reminder that greatness isn't found in glory, but in the moments where heart chooses humanity over winning. And that sometimes the legacy we leave behind is not a record on a stopwatch, but a pair of old shoes that just keep running. If this story moved you, if Jayden's quiet courage, Coach Harris's unwavering belief, and the power of one selfless decision resonated with something deep inside you, then don't let it stop here. Join us at Deep Inside HQ by hitting the like button, subscribing to our channel, and turning on the notification bell so you never miss a story that reveals the heart behind the headlines. We tell real stories that inspire reflection, challenge perceptions, and remind us all of the quiet strength that exists in everyday people. Be part of a community that believes character matters more than applause.